Have you ever noticed how some people carry their past like invisible chains, dragging every wound, every failure, every betrayal into every new moment? They don't move forward. They don't transform. They simply repeat the same patterns, telling themselves the same stories, living the same limitations over and over again. And then there are others who seem to break free from their history entirely, as if they've discovered some secret formula for rebirth. Now imagine if you did the same, if you stopped being defined by what happened to you and started being defined by what you choose to become. That's where the point lies. When you remain trapped by your past, the world around you becomes a prison of repetition because people expect you to stay exactly who they think you are, based on who you used to be. But the day you choose to rewrite your story, to become unavailable to your old identity, everything shifts. Those who thought they knew your limitations realize they know absolutely nothing about your potential. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." Now think about this. When you break free from your past conditioning, who really gets uncomfortable? Who insists on reminding you of your old mistakes? Who tries to pull you back into familiar dysfunction just to keep you predictable? This reveals more about their need to control your narrative than about your capacity for transformation. You keep living in yesterday's pain to avoid today's responsibility for change. You keep rehearsing old traumas, replaying failed relationships, justifying current limitations with past evidence. And with every "I can't because," every "I'm just not the type who," every "after what happened to me, you give away your power to choose differently. And at the end of the day, what's left? The same problems, the same patterns, the same small life you've been settling for. But I'll tell you why. Because it's easier to be a victim of your past than the architect of your future. Because staying wounded requires no effort, while healing demands everything. Because your identity has become so entangled with your suffering that you don't know who you'd be without it. This video is not about denying your history or pretending pain doesn't matter. It's about reclaiming your right to evolve. It's about understanding what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating all parts of yourself, including the parts that were hurt, into a new, more complete identity. So I ask you now, looking into your eyes, how long will you continue to be imprisoned by events that are already over? How long will you react to today's opportunities through yesterday's wounds? Maybe it's time to cut those chains, to step into who you're becoming, to become the author of your own transformation. Because when you stop living in the past, everything becomes possible. You have been taught to carry your wounds like badges of honor, to explain your limitations through your history, to justify your stagnation with stories of how you've been hurt. Since childhood, you have been conditioned to believe that your past defines your future, that trauma is permanent, that some wounds never heal. But here's a truth that perhaps no one has told you with this clarity. Your attachment to your past pain is not loyalty to yourself. It is betrayal of who you could become. Do you know why? Because living in the past makes you emotionally unavailable to the present moment. And everything that could transform you, everything that could heal you, everything that could free you exists only in the now. But you can't receive what's trying to reach you because you're too busy guarding what's already gone. People start to relate to you not as who you are, but as who you were. They press the same emotional buttons, expecting the same wounded reactions. They categorize you, limit you, define you by your past behavior. But you don't realize this because you're trapped in an illusion that your history is your identity, that your wounds are your worth, that your pain gives you purpose. Carl Jung spoke about the shadow, those parts of ourselves we reject and repress. But there's another shadow most people never acknowledge, the shadow of who they could become. You avoid your potential because it would require abandoning the familiar comfort of victimhood. You stay small because growth would mean admitting you've been choosing limitation. But the truth is that the more you identify with what happened to you, the more you disappear from what's possible for you. Living in the past is a subtle form of self-abandonment. It's a disguised way of avoiding responsibility, avoiding risk, avoiding the terrifying possibility that you could actually become someone magnificent. When in fact your past was never meant to be your prison. It was meant to be your teacher. Every wound carries wisdom. Every failure carries insight. Every betrayal reveals something about boundaries, about discernment, about self-worth. But only if you're willing to graduate from the lesson instead of repeating the class forever. People who keep you trapped in past versions of yourself don't actually care about you. They care about keeping you predictable, manageable, controllable. Because when you transform, when you evolve, when you refuse to be limited by history, those same people get uncomfortable. They lose the power to define you, to manipulate you through old wounds, to keep you playing small roles in their stagnant stories. And here's the cruelest point. The more you live in the past, the more you miss the present. Because what is too focused on yesterday becomes blind to today. No one can create a new future while their energy is imprisoned in old narratives. No one can become whole while remaining attached to their fragments. So now, stop and think. What story are you telling yourself about why you can't change? What past event are you using as evidence for present limitations? What wound are you nursing that's keeping you from healing? Or better yet, what version of yourself are you avoiding becoming because it would require letting go of who you used to be? But before answering that, we need to understand one essential thing. Why do we cling so desperately to our past? Why do we resist our own evolution? What is behind this almost automatic desire to remain wounded, limited, stuck? The answer lies in what Carl Jung called psychological safety through suffering. And that is what we will talk about in the next part. Because your attachment to pain might be the very thing preventing your transformation into power. Take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, PSYphile. Carl Jung understood that the human psyche clings to familiar pain because it feels safer than unfamiliar growth. Your mind creates elaborate defenses, not just against external threats, but against your own potential for transformation. Every time you say, "I can't because of what happened," you're choosing the known limitation over unknown possibility. And this choice happens so automatically that you don't even realize you're making it. The question is, are you choosing who you become, or are you letting your past decide for you? Every time you react from an old wound instead of responding from present wisdom, you're giving your history more power than your future. When you explain your current choices through past experiences, when you limit today's actions based on yesterday's failures, you are spending your transformative energy on what can never be changed. And Jung was clear, what you resist persists, but what you integrate transforms. The more you fight against your past, the more imprisoned by it you become. But when you stop seeing your history as your identity and start seeing it as your raw material, everything changes. People who live emotionally trapped in the past are not broken. They are simply misdirected. And do you know what happens to someone who refuses to evolve? They become predictable. And when you are predictable, you become controllable. Manipulative, toxic, and emotionally immature people can sense this. They notice that you haven't processed your pain, that you react from old wounds, that you're still trying to heal the past instead of creating the future, and they exploit it. Jung said that a healthy psyche is one that can transform experience into wisdom. This means knowing how to learn from the past without living in it, knowing how to honor your wounds without being defined by them, knowing how to carry your story without being trapped by it. Because true power is not in erasing your history, it is in choosing what meaning you give it. How many times have you sabotaged new opportunities because they reminded you of old disappointments? How many times have you avoided love because past relationships ended in pain? How many times have you played small because past attempts at greatness resulted in failure? This is your past self making present choices. You are keeping alive ghosts that should have been transformed into guides long ago. Your past is like psychic energy that can either imprison or empower you. When poorly processed, it creates repetitive patterns. You attract the same types of toxic people. You recreate the same dysfunctional dynamics. You make the same self-defeating choices. But when consciously integrated, your history becomes your strength. Every wound becomes wisdom. Every failure becomes foundation. Every betrayal becomes better boundaries. Therefore, start observing your own patterns. What triggers automatically transport you back to old pain? What situations make you react like the person you used to be instead of responding as the person you're becoming? These are the exact points where your past is still controlling your future, And that is where you need to work. Not to forget what happened, but to transform how it affects what happens next. And here comes one of Jung's greatest revelations. When you stop being defined by your past, you break the projections that others place upon you based on who they think you are. And that bothers people tremendously because now we are entering dangerous territory, the territory of authentic transformation. In the next part, we will explore how your old identity serves others more than it serves you, and why your evolution completely disrupts the roles you've been assigned in other people's stories. Get ready to understand why some people will fight to keep you exactly as you were, and why your transformation is an act of rebellion against their need for you to stay small. You think you're holding on to your past for good reasons? You believe your attachment to old wounds is about honoring what happened, staying true to your experience, remembering important lessons? But the truth is more complex. Most of your resistance to transformation isn't about loyalty to yourself. It's about loyalty to others' expectations of who you should remain. Staying wounded serves everyone except you. It gives your family permission to keep treating you like a victim. It gives your friends comfortable patterns to navigate. It gives toxic people access to your triggers. It gives manipulators predictable reactions to exploit. Carl Jung called this psychological collusion, the unconscious agreement to remain stuck because change threatens the entire system. But there is another side to this phenomenon that few people notice. While others benefit from your stagnation, you become addicted to the secondary gains of remaining wounded. The sympathy, the excuses, the reduced expectations, the protection from risk. You know that voice that says, "After what I've been through, I deserve," or "I can't be expected to," or "Anyone would understand why I..." None of this is by chance. You're not relating to your potential, you're relating to your wounds. And why do you choose this? Because you're afraid of failing as the new version of yourself. Afraid that if you heal, if you grow, if you transform, and then face rejection or disappointment, you'll have no excuse left. The wound gives you something to blame. The past gives you somewhere to hide. The victim identity gives you permission to play small. The most effective self-sabotage doesn't happen through dramatic breakdowns. It happens in the quiet moments when you choose the familiar pain over unfamiliar growth. When you pick the same type of partner because at least you know what you're getting. When you stay in situations that hurt you because the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. When you explain away your dreams because people like me don't get to have that. And here's the central point. Your past doesn't need your permission to continue existing in your present, but your future needs your permission to be born. When you stop making choices based on what happened and start making choices based on what's possible, the old patterns begin to crumble. The story they've written for you starts to fall apart. And this leaves people unsettled because they no longer know how to relate to you. And worse, now they are forced to examine their own attachment to limitation. Your transformation is a threat because it proves change is possible. Your healing forces others to confront their own wounds. Your evolution challenges their excuses for staying stuck. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is being who you are." When you claim that privilege, when you refuse to remain a character in someone else's narrative, the shadow in others begins to emerge. But what about you? Are you ready to deal with the discomfort of becoming someone you've never been? Are you ready to lose relationships that were based on your dysfunction? Are you ready to disappoint people who preferred you wounded and manageable? Because it is precisely in that choice, the choice to become rather than remain, that a new kind of life is born. And that is what we will talk about now. In the next part, you will understand why transformation is not just possible, but inevitable when you stop being loyal to limitations and start being loyal to your potential. When you stop living in the past, something profound begins to happen. First comes the disorientation, an uncomfortable feeling that seems to ask, who am I if not my wounds? What is my identity if not my story? What is my worth if not my suffering? But gradually this confusion transforms. It begins to clarify, to stabilize, to empower. And then comes possibility. Not the possibility of returning to who you were before you were hurt. That person no longer exists. But the possibility of becoming someone entirely new. Someone who has been through the fire and chosen to let it forge them rather than destroy them. The possibility of integration rather than fragmentation. Carl Jung said that the process of individuation, becoming who you truly are, requires you to reclaim all the parts of yourself you've abandoned, including the part that believes in your own transformation. And that is exactly what you are doing when you decide to stop living in the past. You are not erasing your history, you are graduating from it. It is at this point that you stop being a victim of circumstances and become the author of your story. You cease to be defined by what happened to you and begin to be defined by how you choose to respond to what happened to you. The people who feel uncomfortable with your transformation reveal that they never wanted your healing. They wanted your limitation. And now that you no longer fit their narrow definitions, they don't know what to do with the new you. And that is liberating. You will lose relationships that were built on your dysfunction, but you will attract connections that honor your wholeness. You will distance yourself from environments that require you to stay small, but you will discover spaces that celebrate your expansion. You will become unrecognizable to those who knew your wounds intimately, but finally you will begin to be seen by those who can recognize your strength. Because when you are no longer available to be defined by your past, you become valuable, powerful, truly free. And don't be fooled. This is a rebirth, a complete reconstruction of your identity based not on what was done to you, but on what you choose to do with what was done to you. Now, you only accept relationships that honor your growth. You only engage with opportunities that match your evolution. You only invest your energy in futures worth creating, not pasts worth repeating. And if you have made it this far, it's because a part of you is already ready for this transformation. A part of you has already understood that your past is not your prison, it's your foundation. But let me be clear about what this new life actually looks like. Because transformation isn't just a beautiful concept. It's a lived reality with specific characteristics that you can recognize and cultivate. First, you develop what Jung called responsibility, not just the ability to respond rather than react, but the profound understanding that you are responsible for the meaning you give to everything that happens to you. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what can I create from what happened to me? This shift changes everything. Second, you develop selective amnesia for limitation. Not because you forget what happened, but because you stop consulting your wounds when making decisions about your future. You remember the lessons while releasing the emotional charge. You honor the experience while refusing to be imprisoned by it. This is the difference between wisdom and trauma. Wisdom integrates and transforms. Trauma repeats and stagnates. Third, you develop an unshakable relationship with your own potential. You stop asking others what you're capable of and start discovering it through courageous action. You stop seeking permission to become magnificent and start giving yourself permission to disappoint those who prefer you, diminished. This is perhaps the most radical transformation of all. The moment you realize that your relationship with your own possibility is more important than other people's comfort with your limitations. And here's what happens to the people around you during this process. Some will celebrate your transformation, some will be confused by it, and some will actively resist it. The ones who celebrate are recognizing their own potential through your courage. The ones who are confused are being challenged to examine their own beliefs about change. The ones who resist are being threatened by the proof that evolution is possible. But here's the beautiful paradox Jung discovered. The more authentically yourself you become, the more you attract people who can handle your authenticity. The more you honor your own growth, the more you inspire others to honor theirs. The more you refuse to be limited by your past, the more you give others permission to transcend their own history. This is how individual transformation becomes collective transformation. This is how personal healing contributes to collective healing. When you stop living in the past, you don't just change your own life, you change the consciousness around you. These timeless insights show us that inner peace isn't just a destination, it's a practice we cultivate every day. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to stop being loyal to your limitations and start being loyal to your potential? Are you willing to become someone your past self wouldn't recognize? If this message resonates with you, write in the comments, I choose to become. Let's see how many here are ready for this metamorphosis. If these words sparked a moment of calm or clarity for you, please hit the like button to share this wisdom with others searching for peace. Subscribe to become a part of our PSYphile community, where we explore life-changing ideas every week. And let's keep the conversation going. Which quote spoke to your heart today? Drop it in the comments below. I can't wait to read your thoughts. As you move forward, let these ideas be a gentle guide, reminding you that peace and purpose are always within reach. Until we meet again in our next exploration of the mind and soul, stay kind to yourself, embrace each moment with hope, and may your journey be filled with light and understanding. Take care, PSYphiles, and don't forget, keep watching the next video where we explore the psychology of self-reinvention and discover the specific practices that turn insight into transformation. See you there.